Varesa has been revealed, so let's talk about her. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Alright, so Varesa, she just kinda came out of nowhere. I'm not sure if this character was foreshadowed anywhere at all, or if we previously knew of her existence, but hey, she's here, she's a brand new 5-star character, and I absolutely was not expecting her whatsoever, but hey, here we are. A new Electro character is actually quite interesting, and I'm very much wondering what her archetype is going to be. Because here's the thing, so Electro, we usually get Electro releases quite far apart from each other. For example, Yae Miko was the best aggravate DPS in the game all the way up until Genshin 4.7, whenever Clorox Bleach released, and then she took her role at that, and also ended up becoming the best Electro DPS in the game on the whole, as she beat every other main carry of her element in pretty much every team archetype in which you would use an Electro main DPS. So a new one. Coriander came out in 4.7, and we're heading into 5.5. That's definitely a shorter lifespan than Yae Miko had, but we'll have to wait and see if Varesa does end up being better than her, or if they end up doing entirely different things using entirely different teammates, because that matters too. Shoot, for all we know, she might not even be a main DPS, she could be a support character, we don't know anything yet. But if she were to end up being a main DPS, I'm very curious to see how she's going to fare against the other ones. Considering how some of Notlan's main DPS kits have been so unique, I am actually quite looking forward to seeing what her main gimmick is going to be, if you will. I'm very much wondering what her main teams are going to look like. Only time will tell, to be honest. I also noticed that the drip came a little bit later, which is interesting. I'm not particularly sure why they did that. They've been doing it the same way for a really long time now. Who knows why they did this, but looks like it was a week late for whatever reason. It's hard to think about what she's going to do because we don't really have anything that we're missing in terms of Electro DPSs. The thing is, they made Clorox really good. She covers pretty much every archetype that you would want her to. There's no specific archetype that she doesn't cover very effectively, so when you make a new Electro DPS, I suppose there's a couple of routes they could go down. Number one is taking one specific Electro DPS archetype and really driving it home. So instead of working in every single archetype like Clorox does, just take one of the archetypes that she works in and absolutely tune it to the max. Now this would effectively make Varesa the new best Electro DPS by my standards, because she would be the new ceiling for Electro. But I highly doubt that Hoyoverse is going to make another everyman character in terms of Electro DPSs, because they've done that twice now. Raiden is very versatile, Clorox is very versatile, so I don't think we're in any need of a third one when the previous two still do that job fine, especially Coriander. Now there is one thing that no Electro DPS is currently best in, and that would be plunging. There is currently no Electro Plunge DPS in particular, so possibly they could go for that angle, and the reason why I think about this is because Xianyun has been gone for over a year now. She released in Genshin 4.4, and Genshin 5.4 has passed. So Hoyo was gatekeeping her, but here's the thing. Xiao has been moved to the Chronicled Wish banner, so they can't run her next to Xiao anymore, so I'm assuming they're probably going to introduce a new limited 5-star plunge DPS. It just makes the most logical sense to me. It doesn't step on the toes of the other Electro main DPSs, while still giving Varesa her own unique archetype, and it would also fit with the rerun scheduling. And if Varesa does end up being really strong, that would give Xianyun a boost up in pull value, which would be really nice when you consider that Shieldon took over Xianyun in some of her best teams. That's at least partially what I'm expecting. Now, I'll be totally real with you, I hope she's not an aggravate user. That would just be kinda lame in my opinion. I don't want more aggravate users for Electro. I think we have enough of those. Yae Miko is great in aggro if you want that specifically. Clorox does just fine in the team archetype too. Let's just steer clear of aggravate, why don't we? I think that will be very, very nice. And considering that we have Autodon, it's actually kinda realistic to assume that Varesa could end up utilizing Electro Charged in some way, shape, or form. I'm visualizing a team like this. Varesa, Autodon, Lady Farina, and Xianyun. You've got Xianyun to cover for 4BV and healing for Fanfare Generation. Then you've got, of course, our beloved Lady Farina, a great buffer in general. Autodon's amazing in Electro Charged. He can also hold 4-piece Intercity. And then you have Varesa as the main DPS. What I've heard that's more likely is that Eon-san is coming soon. So instead of Autodon, I'm expecting her to probably end up being Varesa's best installed teammate. We'll have to wait and see on that. There's literally no basis for this. But typically speaking, whenever Hoyoverse releases a brand new 4-star character on the banner of a limited 5-star, they tend to be that limited 5-star's best installed support. For example, think about Farazan being really good for Scaramouche. Of course, that's not always the case, but it is indeed a pattern that Hoyoverse has followed in the past. I think it's pretty likely that Eon-san is going to be releasing next to Varesa. We'll see the drip pretty soon, I would imagine. It's a bit strange with the recent drip market scheduling. I'm not sure what's happened there, but I believe that they're just doing them later on now, and I believe that we're probably going to see her drip tomorrow, but considering that she's the last Notlon hero, let's be real, she's probably going to be dripped the day after this video comes out. So there's a probability of that being the case too. I don't want to rule out Overload teams, because Chevreuse is really strong. Overload teams are just absolutely killer for Electro DPSs these days because of how strong that 4-star is. She totally revived that archetype up from the ashes. Literally crazy. So I would not be surprised to see some of those teams running around the place if she ends up being a DPS. In terms of her kit being supportive, maybe. I don't really think that that's likely. It's very hard to beat the quality of supports that we currently have right now. And let's think about it. What are we currently missing from the support roster? An HP buffer. You know who that would buff? No Valette. Mr. Settle Down! We don't need more buffs for him, so they're probably going to hold off on an HP percent buffer for a very long time to come. And while I'm sure that there's many other supportive avenues that they could take, I'm not really particularly sure if it's going to come out of an Electro character, or just a random Electro 5-star character who's filling in the 5.5 patch. Now, with that being said, I really hope she's not going to fulfill the curse of 5.5. Now, granted, you could argue that Mizuki took that curse because the Notlon patches have been pushed up a little bit. We got Lantern Rite earlier than usual, as an example. We got the Anniversary earlier than usual. So you could argue that, technically speaking, Mizuki's the one who had to bear that curse. In which case, we might be in the clear. Varesa might be allowed to be good. She could make history. The first X.5 character to release that's actually meta on release. Keyword is on release. I know that Chiori is decent these days, but on release she was pretty underwhelming. I believe in you, Hoyoverse. Break the curse of X.5, even if it technically doesn't apply here. I'm hoping that she's gonna be decent. But to be honest, the power level of Notlon has been really satisfactory. They haven't really released any bad characters. I would say the quote-unquote worst Notlon character that they've released is Chaska, and even she feels pretty decent to play, and she still clears quite comfortably in my experience. I don't really think that there's any one Notlon character that I can point at and be like, haha, they suck. Mizuki doesn't count, she's from Inazuma. I'm talking about the Notlon Nation specifically. I feel like all of them ended up filling up their niches very well, and they all performed to a very good standard. So for that reason, I honestly have pretty good expectations for Varesa. I don't see why she would end up being bad. I mean, maybe because she's a random filler character. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that she had any really important significance in the Notlon Archon quests or just during the Notlon main story. But to be honest, Hoyoverse has released characters out of nowhere that have ended up being very good multiple times, so that's not really a requirement. She could still have quite good potential. We'll just have to wait and see in that regard. You see, with Notlon kit designs, you usually want to sort of reverse engineer your expectations in a sense. You want to look at what is the opposite of what Hoyoverse would normally go for with this type of character, and that's usually what the kit will end up being, seeing as unique kits were mostly Notlon's main focus. Ultimately, a brand new Electro character is welcome in general, considering how few and far in between they are. Who knows how good she'll end up being, but I do have high hopes this time around. Usually, I try to keep my hopes low for the X.5s, but I'd just like to remain hopeful because, to me at least, there's been no Notlon main DPS that's disappointed me in terms of power level. I haven't been especially underwhelmed by any specific Notlon main DPS. I'm not really too concerned about power creep, because even if she does end up being the brand new best Electro DPS, I highly doubt that they're making another Electro DPS that has the exact same positive qualities as another one, you know? I do believe that they're going to be able to differentiate them in quite a few ways. The problem with power creep only truly starts, in my opinion, when older characters of decent investment can't clear anymore. And here's the thing, that's just not the case in Genshin. Characters from 5 years ago can still clear with the right amount of investment. Xiao can still clear the Abyss pretty well to this day. So when you've got a really solid, strong main DPS like Chloriander, I heavily doubt that she's suddenly just going to become irrelevant the moment that Varesa drops. And even if that ends up being the case, the main principle still stands. If you would rather clear with Clorox as opposed to Varesa, you can absolutely do so. There is nothing stopping you from doing so, and she will still be very strong. Think about it like this. Just because Moeka exists doesn't mean that Arlecchino and Linny are bad pyro characters. You can still absolutely achieve very nice clear times with them. Both still remain as S-tier pyro DPSs. So while Clorox might not have had the same lengthy lifespan as Yae Miko in terms of being the best Electro DPS, I'm not really too concerned about it because A, I believe that Varesa is probably going to hone in more on one specific archetype as opposed to being an every woman, and B, even if she is an every woman, it's not like she's not going to be able to clear, she'll still be very good. In terms of Varesa's character design, I have mixed opinions. So I personally think that horns are some of the coolest things you can ever put on a character. You put horns on a character, and that character design is elevated to the next level. For example, Ganyu is one of my favorite character designs in all of Genshin Impact, and I just love those shiny red horns. They look so interesting. There's a sort of texture that's sort of implied with how they're shaded. It's gorgeous. I absolutely love her character design, no questions asked. I can't help but think that horns are just peak character design. So the horns I am a massive fan of. I think they look really cool, I love how they're shaped, and they are just 100% to my liking. You know what else is massive? Her ears. I actually quite like the cow ears. I know some people tend to be a bit mixed when it comes to adding animalistic features to humanoid characters, but here's the thing. My personal favorite anime is Beastars. I think that you can really make those sort of designs work very well. I really like how ZZZ does it as an example. You have characters like Miyabi who are half fox, and then you also have characters like Lycon who are just straight on, like a big dog. So you get the idea. I am actually quite fond of animalistic features if they're executed well, especially horns. So the whole cow thing that she's got going on, I'm a fan of it. I actually think it looks really neat. I think the tail is nice. I like the hair, I like the face. There are generally some components here of the character design that I really, really like. I also believe they gave her a unique body model, which is actually interesting. Now, I actually commend that because usually Hoyoverse uses the same couple of body models for most of their characters, so this differentiates her a bit. It's a bit of a departure from what we're used to, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. As for what I'm less hot on, I don't particularly know if I like the outfit or not. It's not bad. It's not bad by any means. I look at it and I think, okay, that looks decent enough, but it just feels a bit disjointed, if that makes any sense. It's like, I'm really not too hot on the colorful plasters and the colorful, like, hearts on her socks. I would personally remove that if it was up to me. They're not really my thing. I'm not a huge fan of it. Just not for me personally. I don't really think the beige jumper thing fits with the rest of her outfit. The sort of, like, material that it is, if that makes any sense, just feels a bit random. I like the color scheme they went for with the clothes in general. Sort of hot pink with some cyan. Not too bad. Not too bad. And when you put all these components all together, it just ends up not really particularly being my thing. Now, with that being said, I don't think it looks objectively bad. The horns are hard carrying the design for me. I really like them. I think they're just so cool, dude. I'm telling you, put horns on a character, it just immediately boosts the quality of their design. So I'd say she's average looking in terms of character design. Not too bad. Ultimately, I'm looking forward to hearing what Hoyoverse has to say about her kit. I really would not be able to tell you what specific archetype she's going to be using because, after all, it's not LAN. This is somewhat of an unpredictable nation in every way, shape, and form, including the drip marketing schedule now, it seems. Though, that's another thing that Hoyoverse has been doing. Even their special programs, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe have also been scheduling those at more random times too. So, yeah. Your guess as to what this character does, it's as good as mine. But what do you think of Varesa? Does she appeal to you, and are you looking forward to hearing about her kit? Or is she a pass? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I have a ZZZ second channel. Head on over and subscribe if you're interested in some fun, silly ZZZ content. I'd also like to mention that I stream on Twitch. I stream once a week, every week, on Saturdays, starting from 3 PM UK time. Come along so that we can play Wuthering Waves, ZZZ, and do some other fun stuff together. Hopefully this video was able to give you some food for thought in regards to what Varesa's kit might look like, as well as me just giving some general opinions on the character. This has been Juice, signing out. And considering that this character appears to be a cow, I'm going to use this opportunity to give a very hot take. I think I prefer soya milk and like plant-based milk over regular milk. Listen, I will gladly drink regular milk. I think it tastes great. But for some reason, there is just something in vegan milk that tastes really good. Am I crazy for that? I don't really like vegan alternatives. I usually hate vegan alternatives, but like, I'm telling you, man, vegan milk, it is so good.